It's been a busy few weeks for Microsoft. You launched Windows 8 and the Surface tablet computer, which you have over there, on October 25th in New York. Then a few days later, you launched Windows Phone 8 in San Francisco.
Right.
What has the early response been to these products?
Well, we're really delighted with the way that people have picked up on not only the phone, the operating system itself for the tablet environment, but also the partnerships that we've built out with our big PC manufacturing partners. We are a company that really thrives on ecosystem, and historically we've never done a reference point like what we did with the Surface. So the Surface, and you pointed it out, here's mine. I'm happy to share this with anyone as long as they do some email for me later on. But you can take a look at the environment. You know, the whole notion of being able to take a keyboard that's got input and then separate it, connect it back again with the metallic capabilities that it's got, and be able to use it as both an input and an editorial device is something that we've really we've kind of struggled with, I think, as an industry.
So typically you do the software behind the whole experience. In this case, you're doing the hardware as well. How does that change things?
Like I said, we really rely on partners a lot. And so, you know, not only do I have a Surface here, but I've also got a great Acer Windows 8 machine that one of our great partners has built. And we are not going to make a zillion of these things. We're going to make it as a reference point so that people can look at some of the innovative designs. The thing people talk about most when I show them the Surface is the keyboard. Right. They're about the keyboard, the USB ports, and the battery supply. I'd love for them to talk more about what you see on the slide here, which is the innovative interface. But right. The hardware reference point is really something that people have really picked up on. So we hope PC manufacturers take advantage of that and then use it to further the innovation that they're building out.
Now we're here to talk about advertising, but it's been a newsworthy week at Microsoft, of course, with the departure of Steven Sinofsky. So I can't let that go by without asking you, what can you tell us about the reasons for this mutual decision and what it means for Microsoft?
You know, Steven's been a great leader, and he's, I think, been around Microsoft for 23 years in one capacity or another. The timing was obviously something that he put a lot of thought into. Wanted to ship this hardware product, wanted to ship the operating system. I can tell you that the people that are going to be taking over for Steven are terrific and well-respected innovators in the industry, both on the technical side and on the business and strategy side. So both Tammy and Julie are going to be people that, you know, I think are going to take us into the next generation of computing.
Can we expect any change of direction in light of his departure?
I don't think we've got, you know, anything to say on that right now.
Okay. All right, so back to what you do. As I mentioned, I've covered a few Windows launches in the past, and I can't recall one that's focused so much on advertising integration within the operating system itself.
Right.
What is the opportunity you see for advertising in Windows?
Well, I think the first thing that you've got to do is kind of take the discussion a click up and talk about what the ecosystem looks like. I've got a particular point of view that if you're Apple or Google or us or Amazon, you've got a strategy that really does center on devices and services. Right. Now, the way that each individual company plays this out is radically different between us and Amazon and Google and Apple. But inherently, there is a services component to what they do. In other words, a consumer online born in the cloud type strategy, and there is a hardware component to what they do. Apple's decided to build their own ecosystem of, you know, proprietary hardware. They make a nice margin on it, and they built some very interesting services on top of that with Siri and iTunes, et cetera. Done a really nice job of being able to build that, but it's fairly closed. With Google, you've got an ecosystem that looks a lot like ours. In other words, they use PC manufacturers to get their OS out, but then they fund most of what they do through the huge profits that they make on search. They own, you know, 25 billion of the 30 billion in search generated around the world. And they're able to get distribution on Gmail and that sort of thing, but it also fits in that services plus hardware or devices type model. Amazon, they started out with a Kindle, really interesting, you know, model for reading, but now that they've taken another step and built an OS on top of it that's more general purpose, they're looking to build the capability to leverage all the rich data that they collect around a user and make that more than just a book selling type of an operation. They're really, truly a big e-commerce player. And when you get to us, we've had this big partnership that we've developed with all our OEM and PC manufacturers, but our goal is to build very, very, very immersive consumer experiences that we can put on top of that independent ecosystem, along with a couple of design reference points like the Surface that I talked about, and get people to be wedded to it. So with that as a backdrop on the ecosystem, what does it mean for advertising? I've got a point of view that says we should not be distracting users. We should not be interrupting their activities across the web. We shouldn't be chasing them around, as a matter of fact.
Right.
And in order to do that, it relies on contextual as the real game changer here in the next generation of advertising that we build out. So Michael Dwan is going to be doing a breakout session later on this morning, and he'll show you how we've taken things like AccuWeather and put Jeep in front of it to bring a weather-based environment in a very contextually relevant way. So that the first thing you see when you get to the ad unit is big, fat 3D raindrops. The sun kind of poking through the forest. A Jeep Cherokee, scaling up a big mountainside. And then over time, the sun comes out, lights go off, the car is featured, and you're thinking about weather-related activities as you go through that ad experience. That's the kind of thing that I think people are going to be, consumers, marketers, and agencies are going to be interested in helping people get to.
So I had a chance to have a demo with Michael yesterday, and he showed me some of that. And on this, there's an app that's made for a newspaper website, and in the back you have what is the texture of the inside of a car. And as you scroll across, which is the Windows 8 interface, there are several different live tiles which all change as you go, or at least change they're synchronized to the background. So this idea of ads in apps is fairly new. There are a lot of apps out there that don't have ads. What makes you feel that there's an opportunity there, and how do you feel the consumer is going to react to that?
Well, you have to start with developers. Developers can sell their product in one of three ways. You can either sell it because you're a subscription-based model. That's what a newspaper might do that develops an online ad. Or a TV program or something with constant content continually being run through it. You can sell it ad hoc, so you can sell a one-time transaction, or you can do ad-funded in order to make your product come alive. In the ad-funded model, which the majority of apps out there are, what you're going to find is that developers want to get consumption and a huge user base built for their product, their application, but they've got to figure out a way to innovate. And innovation costs money. They're gonna have advertisers flock to the products that are really good, and then we'll do a great job of providing the kind of innovation that you were just talking about, so that advertisers really want to advertise on their products.
But it surprises me when you say the majority of apps out there are ad-funded. And I suppose when I think about it, I subscribe to the FT, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and I suppose they're all ad-funded.
Yep.
But they're media companies who have ads anyway. This sort of integration seems to be a little bit further down, and it's about the interface itself. And I suppose, what is it that makes you feel that people are interested and willing to engage with ads on multiple levels? Because when they read those different media sites or go into those apps, they'll have their own ads. So what makes you feel that there's an opportunity to create something that's at a higher level through Windows 8 itself?
Yeah, I've got a little different perspective on just media companies being, putting a paywall in front of their product and then saying, this is the only way that you can interact. We've got a deal, for example, with the Tribune Company, who owns the Chicago Tribune and then the LA Times, and they're ad-funded, the application that they're going to be delivering on top of Windows 8. So they want not only to use the SDK that we've built into it, but also they want to use our sales force to go out and take those ads, bundle it with our products, and be able to get even more richness. Why would marketers, why would consumers want to interact with ads on a more engaged basis? Why would they want to take advantage of the fact that we've built all this texturing, you called it, the fact that you've got a changing background in an automotive ad? It's because it's more useful to a consumer. And where the consumer finds utility, marketers want to be. So in the case that you're talking about, where you get to tour the inside of a Ford or a Toyota or whatever automotive ad that you saw, you're actually getting a lot more detail in a contextually relevant sense than you would if you were to click on a banner ad or click a video off the web.
And how will you judge the success of those ads?
Well, the impression that we're generating is something that we can measure. And so it's been one of the interesting conversations that I've had with agencies and advertisers is, what does the next generation impression in Windows 8 look like? We can measure when someone takes their index finger and scrolls across the landscape that you see up here to get to an ad. We know when it's being presented, and we know when they're going to go into the ad and how deep they get into it. Now, that isn't a classic impression, and these ads are about 4 times more expensive than a traditional web-based version of what you'd see, just because of the immersion. So far, we're sold out in the launch of the product, and these sponsorships last for about 3 months. The next sponsorship deals are coming up at the beginning of February, and we're already seeing some pretty strong pipeline there. So people are not, advertisers anyway, want to be part of that because they see the utility that this offers.
Is that 4 times more expensive than a banner ad? 4 times more expensive than what sort of web-based ad?
A traditional CPM that you'd see. So, we'll sell in the United States a click-to-video or a immersive ad that you've seen in the car example that you brought up for about $15, which is, if you were to take the same type of experience on the browser, it'd be about 1/4 of that.
So you're also bringing advertisements to Skype, or you have already. You've done something called New Ads for the Xbox Connect that's being developed. Tell me a little bit about these new ideas and how they'll work.
Yeah, well, you're going to hear from Tony Bates, the president of our Skype division, a little bit later on this afternoon. So Tony will talk a lot about audience, and marketers want to follow audience. So I'll pick it up assuming that Tony's already had that dialogue with everyone and talk about what the advertising experience looks like. It's really compelling, and the thing that we want to be very careful about is not to interrupt the Skype experience. We don't want the Skype experience, which is a golden egg for 2 people having a very engaged conversation, to turn into anything but a tremendous experience moving forward. Right. So the conversational ad unit is a very important one for us. The ability to do things with one another. The brainstorming that we've done so far has been, let's design a Nike shoe together online if we happen to be in the mood to do that, and we'll provide the opportunity for people to engage in that kind of behavior. With new ads, what you're talking about is the Xbox Live platform. And if you're an Xbox user, you've got to connect. You're able to interactively use your body in order to navigate through an advertising experience through the Connect device. And that's something that people are picking up on quite well as well. So
do you sell those ads already? Are people already doing that?
Yep, they're already doing it.
What sort of ad? I mean, the idea of interacting with brands sounds fascinating. I'm sure to the marketers.
Yeah.
Why would someone want to play with a Coke bottle?
Well, let me give you an example. Forza, which is one of the games on Xbox, has been something that we've been working with one of our automotive advertising partners with. And they can not only design a car, but also change the shape of the track, really get involved if you happen to be a gamer and are playing that game with the Forza experience. And that's an ad unit. The biggest and fastest growing demographic, though, on the Xbox is females 18 to 40. And we're finding that they're the chief entertainment officer for their house. So because we're putting so much content on the Xbox Live environment, we're seeing a lot of CPG customers, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, L'Oreal, come to the Xbox platform and really want to get engaged. And those sorts of things are pretty cool. There's an entire beauty section, a beauty app that L'Oreal has developed, for example, that has had a huge amount of uptake in the three weeks or so since we launched it.
Will that be niche? I mean, will that always be a niche opportunity for you? Or do you see, because I mentioned to you, I went out to Redmond about a year and a half ago, and I saw a lot about, your vision of the home theater. And the Xbox is very much at the center of that. There's a lot of gesture control. There's, turning the channel through your voice, things like that. So there is this potential opportunity to create a new form of ads, which you're doing with new ads, that immerses you in a whole other way. But television advertising is typically about a mass audience. This is something different, isn't it?
Well, it depends on, it completely depends on the amount of distribution that we get off the console.
Right.
We've got about a little over 40 million consoles out in the world today. Excuse me, 60 million consoles out in the world today, 40 million of which have Xbox Live subscriptions. That's not a very big number when you compare it to TV.
Right.
If the console market starts to be something that people really want to get involved in and create more than just a linear TV experience, music, gaming, interactive entertainment, where you and I can sit on different sides of the world and watch a soccer match and talk about it and talk smack to one another. That kind of thing you can't do on just linear TV. So to the extent that we can get consoles that support that kind of behavior, and then people to subscribe to the service on top of that, which we've got deals around the world with all these content providers. Canal Plus is one here in France. We'll see, I think, a lot more mass migration. It'll stop becoming just a niche product, and it'll start becoming something that is a lot more mainstream.
Okay. In a moment, I'll come to the audience to see if there are any questions, but I just want to ask you a broader question. In preparing for this talk, I read up, of course, and came across an article in Adweek that was published over a month ago, and basically kind of, it was called The Long Goodbye, and the question was, how committed is Microsoft to advertising? Of course, you had the $6 billion write-down for the acquisition of Quantif this summer, so a big company you bought that was supposed to be your advertising play in 2007, the entire value of that, around the entire value was written down. So not a success. You're talking about a lot of future ideas. Obviously, you're hopeful that these will work out. How committed is the company to advertising?
I think that you're going to judge us by our actions. And if I were to say we're all in, which we are, if I were to say, you should look at the innovation that we're driving and the ad opportunities that are truly transformative, I think those would be words, but you should look at us by our actions and what we do in the market. And based on the uptake that we're seeing on not only our mainstream products that have gotten us to where we are right now, MSN, Windows Live, Messenger transitioning into Skype, we've rewritten the UI for mail recently, but also some of the incubation products. You mentioned Skype, largely, you mentioned Xbox, you mentioned, obviously we spent a lot of time talking about Windows 8. People should judge us by our progress there. And I'm incredibly convicted. My boss, Steve Ballmer's incredibly...
I think you're convinced.
I'm convicted about the opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm also convinced, you're right.
All right.
I'm also convinced that it's a big one. But I think that our company generally is, because you can see that the services that we're building are lining up toward advertising as a big reason to want to get great service experiences for consumers.
And why are you so convinced about that? I mean, why is Microsoft so dedicated to advertising, considering that you're making software that people like and buy, you're making hardware? You don't need to be in the advertising business. What is so appealing about advertising?
We're a media company. When it comes down to it, in order to have these consumer services that I've talked about be really relevant, they've got to stand on their own. Right. So we're thinking about consumer services in a way that says we're not going to just use them to, kind of serve as add-on plugins to other products. They're going to be services that are so compelling that people want to use them based on their own merit. And in order to do that, to develop a great business model around it, you've got to choose one of the three different ways that I described with monetizing. You've either got to be subscription funded, you've got to be ad hoc funded, or you've got to be ad funded. Each of the services is going to figure out the various ways that they want to build their funding model, but ultimately they're held to a profitability target, just like anyone else would be outside Microsoft, who's developing a company that is solely invested in consumer services.
Okay, good. Well, let's throw it open to the audience. Does anyone have a question? There in the back, just if you don't mind giving us your name and your question.
Hi there, it's Andrew Fawcett-Wolf from Orange. As an ad man and as a Microsoft ad man, I'd be interested to understand if you're committed, what your view is on IE10 and the default do not track setting that you're doing that.
Yeah, as an ad man and as a Microsoft ad man, I think that we can do better than what we currently do today. And I've got 3 points of view on this. The first one is that the regulatory environment has certainly said that we've got to do better than we're currently doing. As an industry, we haven't done a very good job of defining what it means to respect the signal that's sent from the browser when a user says, please don't follow me around the internet and show me things that I don't want to see. Secondly, consumers are saying the same thing to us. They're saying, if I've said to you, please respect the privacy settings that I put in place. Please make sure that it's easy to designate when I want to be a contributor and when I don't want to be. That's something that we as an industry should follow their lead on. And from an advertising experience, I think that nothing could really be less interesting than showing people content that doesn't really register. And so this is why contextual, this is why beautiful, useful, and relevant makes so much sense for advertisers. And the early indications we've gotten from a number of our advertising partners are that they agree with us. So we're going to take the lead in many respects by saying we want to redefine the way that marketers get their brand message out. And we're going to do it because we're not only an ad company, but we're also a technology company that's got a certain amount of accountability to the way that these products and infrastructure tools are built.
Over here in the first row.
Good morning, Alistair Crane from Grapple. So really fascinated by all of this, and particularly the innovation, but from something that's becoming increasingly popular in these times of austerity, to talk about sales beyond innovation. So I was wondering if there was anything you could share with us in terms of the incremental business value, in terms of tangible cash that you're generating for your advertisers with this new innovation.
I think it's, well, here's what I can tell you. It's probably too early to talk about that because we're about 3 weeks out of the shoot. So I don't have any real results to share with you. Reporting is one of the things that sort of follows the ad opportunity, and so we're busy figuring out what kind of reporting really does resonate with advertisers. I can tell you that we've sold about 4 million units of Windows 8. There's about 700 million copies of Windows 7 out there that people can upgrade. And on top of that, there's another 500 to 600 million older copies of Windows that people have shown some real vested interest in. So, I think that the billion plus type of audience that exists is something that marketers, now that we've opened the operating system, the opportunity of advertising, just can't ignore and will want to be a part of. At least that's what they're telling us. So we'll have more news to report to you probably by the end of the what would it be, calendar fourth quarter.
Another question in the front row.
Could you address the Outlook.com changes and how's that connected to the existing Outlook?
Yeah, we recently, about 2 months ago, I guess, in the US, started migrating users from, or giving them the opportunity to upgrade to Outlook.com, which is a fully web-based, upgraded modern version of what an email client should be. We found that Hotmail was getting a little tired, candidly, and that we could do better for consumers. The migration path has been something that people have really taken a lot of interest in, and so as we educate them about what's possible on the new client, the new service, I should say, there's no actually client-side software, it's all web-based, people are starting to move in droves, just like they are with Messenger into the world of Skype, which is a much more enhanced experience. As far as what it means for advertisers, the goal is going to be, again, beautiful, useful, and relevant, and so we're rethinking the types of ad products that will come out on Outlook.com, different from what was available on Hotmail. And I think we still got some work to do on the R&D side there to really get a great monetizable as well as useful interface for both consumers and the marketers. But more to come on that, certainly.
Second row.
Hi. Oriel from AppsFire. I was interested to know, are you going to enable opt-out of advertising into your new ad units? Because if they are so well integrated, I wanted to know how if you're going to be able to break this experience and how the users are going to be able to do that. Are they going to be aware that they can opt out of advertising if it's possible at all?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that you fund innovation on the internet is by giving people the opportunity to generate revenue from it. And so I've mentioned a couple times now the 3 different ways that I think people have a way of generating a living out of making a development investment. For those people who want to engage with an application and the developer has decided that it's going to be ad funded, they have the opportunity to either engage, probably, and this is a developer by developer, so application by application decision that they have to take. They have an opportunity to say, I agree to the terms and conditions that you've put in front of me, and if one of those terms is I can serve you ads, then that's the price for entry into the app. If they have decided not to do that and they want to make it not ad funded, then they've got to think of different value, either one of the two other alternative ways of making money, or they can decide to do it for other reasons. But that's the framework that I think about driving value on the internet in the application model with. And I think that people generally have said, we think that that's one that holds up for now.
Any more questions? One in the back over here.
Thanks. I'm Robert Andrews from Paid Content. If consumers' attention is moving from search to social, as people say, what does that mean for how you approach Bing advertising?
Yeah, I think that I find it so interesting that we as an industry have allowed the definition of social to be equal to posts that are by definition not social. They're asynchronous, they're not real time. I think of social and I think real time. So let me just pick some products out that I work with on a regular basis, and you can expand that to your definition of what real time looks like for you. But with both Skype and Xbox Live, the interaction is real time. I'm talking to you over the Skype connection that we've got together. And the way a brand marketer might want to get involved with that kind of a conversation is really appealing. But that's social. You know, you and I doing something real time. Xbox Live, I use the example of us being able to have a conversation about a soccer match that we're watching on different parts of the world. You live in London, I live in Seattle. We can do that via Xbox Live today, and you know, for a brand to be able to get in the middle of that and have a rich dialogue with us, because we're not only interested in soccer, but we're also interested in Adidas, would be something that I think we'd find value in. So I think that we have to take social 1.0 and really evolve it into something that's a lot more, I would use the term real time, just because I think that's, you know, part and parcel of what social is. So how does it relate to Bing? We've taken Bing and not only used Bing as a search engine, but we've integrated it with all our products. So the Xbox example that I gave you, you can sit in front of your Xbox and without having to get to a keyboard or use a controller, have the following conversation or dialogue with it. Xbox, Bing James Bond movies, and then get to all the series of James Bond movies, I don't know how many there are, and then ask it to show you just the ones with Roger Moore in them, and be able to narrow it down that way. So Bing is not simply a search engine in the classic sense of being able to go online and find something that you're interested in getting more detail around. It's an integral part of our platform play.
We just have a couple minutes left. Maybe a quick question.
It's Frank Kelch from CB Venture Capital. How has the collaboration with Nokia been, and how does it all fit in this system that you're putting together here?
And maybe can I pick up on that? Gartner yesterday released data showing that Nokia has slipped to seventh place in smartphone sales. They were number one, maybe 5 years ago, something like that. What's the chief selling point for the Windows Phone 8 experience?
Yeah, so I'll take both those kind of in the same voice, and if I don't get to either of your questions, please let me know. We have collectively with Nokia made a big bet on reinventing the way people use their phone. And I think that what you're going to see with Windows Phone 8, which has just been recently launched, kind of in concurrence with the Windows 8 platform, is that we've got a much more integrated way of being able to operate with a user. So the concept of a live tile is something that you can't find on any other OS. Not having to look at an application, or a tile in this case, and decide whether or not it's worth perusing because of the activity that's behind it, that's something really, really crucial for the experience that we're trying to drive. Nokia is in an interesting situation, aren't they? I mean, they've made their living and created all their scale on the feature phone market. And what they're trying to do is something that I think is best captured in the innovator's dilemma, where you say, I'm going to cannibalize my existing market in order to grow a new one. We're both working through that together. The partnership's been very good, and we continue to find ways that we're going to do more and more, better and better. I think that probably addresses your question, Matt. But I think the only thing I'd add to it is that Nokia's market share has slipped. Ours has as well, and we're rebuilding that together. We're doing it not only with Nokia, but we're also doing it with other manufacturers and carriers who have wanted to get in the game.
But today, Stephen Elop, who was, of course, with Microsoft before joining Nokia, he's made a big bet on this partnership. I think the stock is down something like 80%. It's tough. He really needs Windows Phone 8 to work out for Nokia. So what is the reason when someone goes to the store and they have the option of a Google Android phone, an iPhone, why are they going to buy a Nokia Lumia Windows Phone-enabled phone?
The Carl Zeiss designed lens, the actual handset itself, it's a beautiful device. So forget the operating system for a second, it's a beautiful device. But when you get into the operating system, I think the biggest argument for it is that it's personalized. I mean, you could throw, if I had everyone in here, throw their iPhones on the table and then say, okay, go find yours. If it weren't for color, I think you'd have a very tough time looking at the UI and saying, aha, that's mine. I guarantee you that if you look at a Windows phone, and I'd be happy to show anyone mine, that's possible. It's possible to personalize your phone so that it really looks like something that not only has all your kind of creative DNA on top of it, but also the things that you use most. And with live tiles, the things that pop most when you're trying to use your phone. So I think that's the thing that really separates it.
Well, I see we're over our time. So please join me in thanking Frank Holland.
Thank you.